Hi there. One of the most frequent questions asked is, how do I change my table tennis rubbers? Most players who play competitively will keep their blade, the wooden part, and they will change their rubbers. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your rubbers, and it is almost identical to if you were gluing rubbers on from brand new. So the first thing you need to do is take off the old rubber. You do this very gently because the wood on the blade is quite sensitive, and I always take from the side, and we're doing it little by little. Never just yank the rubber. You have a tendency to splinter the blade or to damage the rubber, and in some cases you may want to put the rubber back on. If you're unhappy with the rubber that you've just replaced it with, you may want to revert back. So very gently, as efficiently as possible, and never just yanking, always in small stages, because you don't want to damage the rubber. And there we are. Now, because we're only replacing one rubber, be careful with this rubber, because this is still good and we need to protect it. As you can see, we have some of the glue on the rubber. We may have a few odd pieces of wood. And you can see that we've got a small amount of glue, especially around the edges where I've put extra glue to make sure it's secure. We've left a bit of that on the blade. We'll deal with that in a moment. The first thing we need to do is open up your rubber. And the rubber that I'm putting on is the new, brand new, it was only released a month ago, less than a month ago, a couple of weeks. It's only been available to buy in the UK for around a week. It's the new Rhymz-Tech from Jeweler, and this is their third rubber released to combat the or to enhance your play with the new poly ball. And in fact, table tennis is a game with many changes, and I think it's probably one of the few sports that is constantly changing, and I won't go into why the governing body feels the need to keep changing every aspect of the game. However, with the new poly ball, you will notice that the ball doesn't produce as much spin. It's not as receptive to spin. It's a lighter ball, and the ball tends to float off the end of the table a little bit more than you would have noticed with the celluloid ball. So this rubber is designed to combat that. It's the Jeweler Rhymz. The first thing I notice when I open this brownish sheet is the edges are curved. And I'm not sure if that's this rubber in particular, but that is very, that reminds me of the days where we used to speed glue the rubbers. The first thing I noticed about this rubber is the sponge is very, it's got very open pores, and it is very porous. It's a 42.5 degree sponge, so it's medium hard. So the first thing we do is we've got the rubber out, and we just get our glue ready. So we spread the glue, an even layer all across the sheet of the rubber. And this sponge is very different to any of the Jeweler Rhymz sponges that I've felt before. So I'm very intrigued to try this rubber. If you want a nice even finish. Now, because this is a brand new rubber out of the packet, we will be applying 2 layers of glue. So just, okay. So we'll leave that now for just over here. Okay, whilst that's drying. And again, from my original video, I've gone for this T-bar, this Donic glue with the sponge on the end, very similar to the combi cleaner. However, these are more popular where you use this sort of water-based PVA type glue with the clip and the sponge. I find that this one is easier because the sponge is more sturdy, so it's easier to spread. Personal preference. Okay, so what I do with the rubber is you just need to feel it with your hand. Some people like to sand it. I'm not against sanding, but I think that you need to be very careful when sanding because you are taking away the wood. Any glue around the edge I tend to ignore unless it comes onto the plane surface. So I'm just carefully, very carefully taking away the glue with my finger. And you can feel where there is glue. There we are, there's a big spot of glue there. I can take that off. Okay, and you need this completely flat, and you will easily be able to tell when the surface of this is flat. This rubber on this side, this red rubber, is the brand new T-Bar Evolution MXS. I'll post a review onto the Evesham Table Tennis website for this rubber. Again, this is a brand new rubber to combat the polyball. This is probably the spinniest rubber that I have ever played with. It's got a very artificial grippy surface. It's not quite a sticky surface like the Chinese rubbers, but it's got it's almost blue fire-esque. I'm very dubious as to how long this will last. I used to play with Tenergy. I'm sort of trying these rubbers because I find that Tenergy is a little bit too, the arc on the ball, the throw on the ball is a little bit too high with the polyball. So I'm just having a play with these. I will post a full review of this Evolution MXS on the Evesham website very soon. But initially, my initial thoughts are it's a very, very, very fast rubber. There's no margin for error, so you have to play a very good shot. So in many ways it's good. It's not as forgiving as Tenergy, and it's a lot flatter. And like the Rhymz, it's not quite as porous as the Rhymz, but there are lots of pores on the sponge. Sticking the rubber onto the blade, it is vitally important that with this new glue that you let the glue completely dry and it will become completely translucent on both blade and rubber. With the old type glues, you were able, even though it was not recommended, but you were able to stick the rubber and the blade together whilst it was still wet or damp. That is not the case anymore. It has to be completely dry before you attempt to fix the rubber to the blade. So once you are happy that your blade is completely smooth, completely even, because if there are any uneven bits, you will get a sort of uneven finish. This rubber has been drying now for around 20 minutes. I'm ready to put the second layer on it. It's virtually dry, it's not quite dry, but I will let the second layer dry completely. So the second layer goes on. Okay. Very, very similar to the first. So I'm just putting my glue on all the way across. I'm making sure that I get every aspect. I'm really covering the bottom because that's the bit which can stick to the bottom of the blade. That's really under there. It doesn't. Some people say that you have to put the glue on in a particular way. Only go upwards, only go across. Don't do circular motions, etc., etc. I believe that as long as you apply the glue evenly, it's irrelevant. Okay. Okay, right, that's that done. So now the blade. Now again with the blade, you have to be quick with the blade because sometimes it dries a little bit quicker and you might take off some of the glue, so you just need to be very careful. After around 20 to 30 minutes of putting your second layer of glue onto your rubber and the first layer onto the blade, you are ready to glue your rubber onto your blade. You need to be very gentle, okay? You need to be very gentle and just hold it, try and hold it by the, try and hold it at the edge, okay? Line it up very, very carefully and just place the rubber on. We're not rolling because these pre-glued rubbers, they come stretched. So if you roll as well, you're stretching them even further. Okay. So just putting a bit of pressure on. Okay. Okay, and then what I would do is I would turn it over and just put some pressure on. Now, when you cut the rubber, it's going to be very difficult to cut it with anything on this red rubber. So you're going to need to just hold this one very carefully. Okay. So very carefully, not aggressively, but very confidently. Let's come off very rubbish. Now, this rubber is not like any rubber I've ever cut before. It's very, very weird. The sponge is very fluffy, but that's a pretty good job. And any imperfections, so to speak, in the cut will be hidden with edging tape. So just put that on there as quickly as you can. That looks fine. So the last thing you need to do is just put it under some pretty heavy pressure so that it can just even itself up. And that is how to replace your rubbers. Thank you.